Agent Morris with the NSA.
We have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
Traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion, over.
Move very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Flag could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over. Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Good evening, everybody. This is Smiles Lewis, live from Austin, Texas, and you have tuned in to another live edition of Anomaly-NOW, straight out of Texas, Austin. Wait, I already said all that. This is the weekly news roundup show for the Anomaly Archives Scientific Anomaly Institute, 501c3 nonprofit here in the Lone Star State. And I will be your host for this evening for this 30-minute or so news roundup. Thank you for joining us, or me, such as the case may be. So yeah, don't panic. Seriously, don't panic. So we didn't do a live show last week. There is a little placeholder there for those of you who may have checked it out, that relates to some of the bad news that we got 2 weekends ago. Late Saturday night on February 18th, I was made aware of the passing of Robbie Graham, who some of you may know as the author of Silver Screen Saucers and the editor of the book, the UFO anthology, UFOs Reframing the Debate, which I and several others were contributors to. And Robbie went on to found August Night Press, publishing new and old materials related to the subject of UFOs and all points connected to it. Unfortunately, the sad news about his death was tinged with multiple sets of information, including that it apparently was a suicide. And there's more to it than that, and that's why you're not really seeing much out there about it. And I'm not going to go into that other than to say our hearts go out to his friends and family and all the people he affected. And there's a hesitancy to eulogize him because of things that he did, likely due to depression. And that's all I'm going to say. But maybe we'll have a little bit something more at the end of the show. But for now, just know that he will be missed. He was human, as are we all, except for those reptoids out there. But yeah, the next day found out about the passing of Richard Belzer, comedian, actor, You may recall him from a number of movies, TV, whatnot. On February 19th, he passed away. And I guess he had been retired from acting for a while. He got his start in stand-up. And he also was the author of, what's it called? UFOs, JFK, and Elvis, which I was reminded of by this post here from Alan Steinfeld, where he captioned this photograph with tribute to Richard Belzer at his brother Len's house with Whitley Strieber. He was the author of UFOs, JFK, and Elvis, and the painting in the back is by none other than Ingo Swann. So yes, from all accounts, Richard Belzer was quite the nice guy. Got along. Of course, he had that projected attitude that was part of his persona, but and probably part of his actual character. But he will be missed. And as I say, don't panic. Well, meanwhile, I also got news of another passing, that of C.B. Scott Jones, Cecil B. Scott Jones. He passed apparently back last month, or now 2 months ago, in the middle of January. He was a quite interesting character in the UFO scene and the paranormal. We've got links over on the anomalyarchives.org webpage, and they'll be in the show notes once we post the show notes for this night's show. And he apparently was living pretty close by over in Mission, Texas. This eulogy here posted at the Kerrville Daily Times. And in looking up more information about Mr. Jones, discovered that, oh wow, his papers were archived at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And we've got a link to that. And I updated the Anomaly Archives other archives list. And a lot of interesting information here. The collection contains original documents from the 1960s to 2013 and copied documents from as early as 1943. Majority pertain to his work as an assistant to Senator Claiborne Pell with the Human Potential Foundation, HPF, and with the Peace and Emergency Action Coalition of Earth, PEACE. Also included are documents related to his time with the U.S. Navy as a fighter pilot and later as a naval intelligence officer, his work with a think tank in California called Common Tempo, and his work for a short-lived nonprofit named the Center for Applied Anomalous Phenomena, CAAP. Also of note is correspondence between Jones and Lawrence Rockefeller, Prince Hans Adam Liechtenstein, and Rima LeBeau, Uri Geller, and Dick Cheney. Fascinating information, fascinating character. We had him speak at an Anomaly Archives event many years ago. And this quote here is from Jack Brewer's UFO Trail from 1985 to 1991. Jones was employed by Senator Claiborne Pell of Rhode Island. Jones was hired as a member of Senator's staff for the quite remarkable stated purpose of studying paranormal phenomena, as reported in 1990 by the Washington Post. In another early 1990s article, will the real Scott Jones please stand up? Writer-researcher Robert Durant called Jones, quote, the most ubiquitous character in ufology and parapsychology, a reference to his significant involvement in both fields. Jones was a regular attendee of related yada yada conferences. Reports such as referenced by Durant have long indicated Jones claimed to be a UFO experiencer, citing a silver disc and later parapsychological events during his Navy career. Yes, at the event in Austin sponsored by the Anomaly Archives, he went into that, and I gave a review of that, which is actually linked in this article here from Jack Brewer's The UFO Trail. Interestingly enough, that will the real Scott Jones please stand up was written by Robert J. Durant. Well, guess what? There's a copy of it over at the CIA.gov website. Interesting. This was, as you can see, approved for release in September 2003. It looks to be about 24 pages long. and is an interesting read. There's multiple copies of this available online. We will link to this and other stuff. And like I said, you can read more over at anomalyarchives.org under the files section for Jones, C.B. Scott. So over this past weekend, trying to distract myself, I had a nice time watching the live online conference put on by the Parapsychological Association dealing with Deviance, Deviant Science, UAPs, and Psi, with presentations by Eric Coly. This fellow, actually, he wasn't, I don't think he was able to attend, but Jeff Kripal was one of them. Again, shared Deviance, the Interrelations of Psi and UAP. This was a very wonderful, inexpensive online conference that I was very happy to attend. It was also a very great networking opportunity, and I hope that they make those archives available. They do tend to post archives on their YouTube channel of past conferences. And coming up and starting just a couple of days ago, the Parapsychology Foundation has their ParaMOOC 2023 going on. And this has a number of interesting speakers. Here are some of those here that range from, Susan Demeter, Gerald Solfkin, Nancy Zingrone, Allison Jornlin, yay, Lloyd Auerbach, yay, wow, just some great folks. And this is going on through March 31st. So I believe this is a free educational event. I'm not 100% sure about that, but you can go to parapsychology.org or just search for ParaMOOC, that's PARAMOOC 2023, and to find out more information about that. Meanwhile, there is this very interesting latest issue of the JSE, the Journal for Scientific Exploration, created by a wonderful organization called the SSE, that's the Society for Scientific Exploration. The JSE is, as far as I know, the only peer-reviewed frontier science-oriented magazine out there, and they have been offering it for free, or at least it looks like they have access to each of the articles in PDF form here. Guest editorial by Paul Cunningham, Mythical Identities, Scientific Realities, and Search for Transpersonal Meaning. Speculations on the True Holy Grail. All kinds of physics experiments, as well as interesting things like evaluating the mystery of Brushy Bill Roberts, aka Billy the Kid, as a case of extreme celebrity worship. The history, legalization, and potentials of psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy. Fantastic. Social factors and UFO reports. Was the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic associated with an increase in UFO sightings, UFO reporting, rather? And of course, some of you might remember from a few years back, we had Chris Rutkowski, Canadian UFO researcher, on this show talking about news reports about whether or not there had been an increase or decrease in that sort of thing. So a lot of great stuff. Highly recommend you check that out. We'll again have links to all this stuff in the show notes for tonight's episode, and hopefully some of that will interest you. And meanwhile, there actually has been some interesting developments in the world of the UAP. Still just not a fan. I prefer UFO. I'm old school. So meanwhile, we have this article over at ctvnews.ca. This is the Canadian news outlet. Document reveals first known Canadian UFO study in nearly 30 years now underway. So yes, multiple governments in North America are now reinvestigating UFOs, UAP. This article is by Daniel Otis over at ctvnews.ca, as I mentioned. Dated today. This just came out, and sure enough, who did we just mention but Chris Rutkowski? And in the paragraph section, we are years behind the Americans, it says. Winnipeg-based UFO researcher and science writer Chris Rutkowski says the last known official Canadian involvement in the subject ended in 1995, when the National Research Council of Canada stopped collecting reports. Working with the group working with a group of scientists focused on gathering instrumented UAP observations would be desirable as a way of studying the UAP problem objectively and with sound methodology, Rutkowski previously told ctvnews.ca. That is their way of saying they didn't actually interview him for this article, sadly. Meanwhile, there has been quite a bit of news, of course, in the wake of those wacky balloon UFO shootdowns a few weeks ago. The War Zone over at thedrive.com has another great article, Broken Arrow, Pentagon UAP Office's Role Questioned Following Shootdowns. And this goes into quite good detail about the nature of this issue. The fact that, isn't AARO supposed to be the organization in the government and intelligence and military of the United States to deal with this? One organization has remained noticeably absent from much of the official disclosures about the responses to these incidents, the Pentagon's fledgling All-domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. This is both conspicuous and curious since this office was created specifically to focus on issues related to the so-called unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. Now, they go on to comment that there's now talk of a new office being created, a new organization being created by the Biden administration to handle this. That all seems a bit strange, given that they've already put money into and we're trying to centralize these efforts. Let's see. Yes, the day before, John Kirby, the top spokesperson for President Joe Biden's National Security Council, NSC, announced the creation of a new working group, quote, to study the broader policy implications for detection, analysis, and disposition of UAPs, or actually unidentified aerial objects that pose either safety or security risks. Part of the work that this NSC-led team, helmed by National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, is expected to undertake will include just getting a better handle on the full extent of benign high-altitude aerial activity over the United States. That seems all fine and well, the article goes on to say, under the circumstances, but there is just one major problem. A dedicated office just for this exact purpose was already stood up, and with significant fanfare, the AARO. We were not alone in being puzzled over this contradiction either. Quote, why is the White House creating a new interagency team to monitor, investigate, and report on unidentified aerial objects when we already have the DoD's AARO, which we helped create over 2 years ago? Mark Rubio, a Republican senator from Florida, who has been an outspoken advocate for taking UAP sighting seriously from a national security perspective, wrote on Twitter in response to the news about the new NSC-led group. Wow. There's a lot more to this article. As usual, the folks over at The Drive are doing a great job. Here is a picture of Sean Kirkpatrick, who was previously Deputy Director of Intelligence and the Director of National Intelligence's representative at U.S. Space Command, and who is the head, I believe now, of this AARO, AARO. And he apparently was among those that briefed members of Congress on the overall situation yesterday, this being a week ago or so. Now, interestingly enough, we have this report over that the Daily Mail has picked up. I'm not sure what other outlets have picked this up, but UFO researcher Robert Hastings, who perhaps has the is known for the notoriety of being the UFO researcher who's lectured at more universities, I think, than any other UFO researcher out there. In fact, I saw him speak at the University of Texas campus and was intrigued. I thought he was an excellent speaker. He stuck to the facts, stuck to the basics of close encounters, but particularly seemed to avoid. I don't really think he even got into even humanoid cases, so probably not even CE3, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But and he definitely avoided any stuff to deal with alien abduction or traditional quote unquote UFO contact experiences. But what was the Daily Mail reporting on? Well, apparently he has been approached by AARO. AARO interviews UFOs and nukes witnesses. The Pentagon's new UAP investigations group takes testimony from U.S. military veterans who encountered UFOs at nuclear weapons sites. Now, I've heard a lot of skeptics debunk these big cases that allege to involve UFOs near these ICBM sites and deactivating them and that sort of thing. I'm not sure what to make of it. I've always been fascinated by these cases. There are a slew of these. And in fact, I think yes, here we go. Since 1973, this is Robert Hastings writing here. I've interviewed 167 of those veterans regarding their experiences. Kirkpatrick asked whether I would be willing to contact the individuals with whom I am still in touch to learn whether they would be willing to testify before AARO staffers. I readily agreed to do so and spent a few days reaching out to them. So this is pretty interesting. Now, of course, Jacques Vallée, in one of his Forbidden Science journals, this is the latest one, volume 5, yes, journals for 2000 through 2009. This is, in one of his earlier ones, he talked about Kit Green suggesting to him that some of these military base incursion UFO cases were in fact like Delta Force style anti-terrorism exercises whereby the defenses were being tested. Now, who knows whether, and these were these mystery helicopters that were often seen were apparently traditional UFOs, but sometimes were described in the reports as helicopters. Those may be very different than these particular cases, and certainly I have no idea how the Delta Force or any anti-terrorism exercise could shut off these devices, or in the way that it's sometimes described. But this should be watched. We should keep an eye out on what's going to happen with this case. Very curious about that. Meanwhile, just some other stuff over at Mysterious Universe. Beware, mysteriousnorg has started very much watching how many articles you will read for free. And in fact, earlier today, I was unable to pull up this article on a different computer. But this one from February 19th, Nick Redfern writes, my current thoughts on the Roswell UFO crash in quotes, you might not like what you see. Interestingly enough, this obviously is as a response to all the UFO balloon talk. And as I've talked on previous shows, the connection of UFOs and balloons, specifically with regard to John Keel's ideas about Fugo balloons, Japanese weaponized balloons being part of the Roswell legacy, perhaps. And of course, the wonderful work of Nick Redfern in his various books, Body Snatchers in the Desert, as well as the Roswell UFO conspiracy. All of these detailing the accounts that he's uncovered over the years of apparent evidence for the commingling of Project Paperclip, Horton Brothers, Flying Wing, aviation technology experiments in the United States from those paperclip Nazis brought over, along with Unit 731 Japanese horrific human experimentation projects combined for the testing of high altitude effects on the bodies of unwitting experimentees, human subjects. And now that could very well be the actual reality behind the UFO crash at Roswell. Pretty interesting article. It's a hypothesis that I actually lean towards in support of as a probable true estimation of it. Meanwhile, we've got Chris Mellon over at ChristopherMellon.net giving his statement for the press and public regarding recent UAP shootdowns. Won't really go into that, but suffice to say, he and others from that new wave of bigwigs trying to change the nature of the conversation are not impressed by these recent incidents that don't seem to be the traditional UFOs or UAP they are interested in declassifying. Over at theblackvault.com, John Greenwald has this interesting article, how secretly filming a counterintelligence agent and misrepresenting classified information sparked an official U.S. Army investigation. This goes into great detail about something I kind of knew a little bit about in regards to the reality show created by Tom DeLonge with the Lou Elizondo being the main star of, about their efforts to get this information out to the public, to declassify everything related to ATIP, OSAP, whatever the hell it's called. And yeah, it's a reality TV show. So can you believe it? Is it reality? You bet you can't. Anyway, there's some very interesting details about the behind the scenes stuff. And as Greenwald has gone to great pains to show, we're not really getting the straightest of answers about the true nature of the OSAP ATIP story, the Pentagon UFO UAP program, supposed UFO program. So I highly recommend you take a look at that if that at all interests you. So let's see here. What else we got? There is a bunch of other articles I wanted to briefly touch on. Let me see if I can bring those up here. Where are they? They're all hidden. Okay. Yeah. So, Facebook and all these social media things are constantly recommending stuff to you, and sometimes it's hit or miss, right? Well, this was actually from May of last year, but it interested me. An all-new, all-electric drone is totally silent, and it uses ion propulsion. Well, there's not really much to this. This is clearly just marketed advertising for this company, but I still found it interesting. I obviously, one of the things about drones is they can be very loud and obnoxious, and not exactly very stealthy in that regard. But obviously we don't know about everything that is out there in the black world, in the world of high-tech military tech. But we have heard for a long time about ion propulsion, a way of electrically charging things to give them a lighter, to have a seemingly anti-gravity type effect. There's a video link here that I'll include, but I still haven't seen the footage of this, but it led me to this footage from 5 months ago. Whereby this particular, designing a next-gen ionic thruster for flight. This fellow has created his own little ion drive. That's pretty cool. I mean, first of all, nice day glow colors and whatnot. But it's all about, electrically charging and creating a wind type situation. And he shows how he built this all, and goes into great detail. And I think it's pretty fun and interesting. I was really hoping Mark would take a look and give us some feedback, but very fun and interesting kind of DIY drone potential here, like for an ion thruster. Meanwhile, speaking of alternative energy or alternative propulsion, now nowhere in this article it's reproduced at msn.com, but it's a Popular Mechanics article by Tim Newcomb, whom we may hear from a little bit later. Scientists defy physics, basically pull energy out of thin air. Now, I immediately assumed this was about ZPE, zero point energy, and the Casimir effect, but I did not see anything in here mentioning zero point energy. But it is saying, using quantum mechanics, 2 different physics experiments prove it's possible to conjure energy from an energy vacuum, essentially pulling energy out of thin air. By teleporting energy across microscopic distances, helping bolster a 2008 theory from Japanese physicist Masahiro Hotta, according to a new report from Quantum Magazine. So if you're into alternative physics and new potential energy sources, here's one for you. Was also intrigued by this older article from March of 2016. Not sure how I missed this. Project Green Glow and the Battle with Gravity. This is over from the BBC, which I had not realized had been covering this kind of anti-gravity work. This article is about Dr. Ron Evans, the man behind Project Green Glow. And of course, we recently were talking about the wonderful book from, I think, 2001, The Hunt for Zero Point. There's that ZPE again, by former aviation magazine editor Nick Cook, and how it definitely seems that there's been quite a lot of research into anti-gravity in the aviation arena, both military and otherwise. And then looking for this, I stumbled upon a video from last year that I will also put in the link, but I don't have pulled up right now, that deals with this, the same, an interview with this Dr. Evans, Roger Evans, I think is his name, about this Project Green Glow. And it's posted on a YouTube channel where I've seen a lot of these really good videos about that sort of thing. So, well, where is the last few things I had here? Oh, yes. So, I mentioned that writer. Well, I didn't bring it up. Where is that? So, I am a fan, of course, of Micah Hanks on my personal hobby web radio station, anomalyradio.com. We've been carrying for some time now the Micah Hanks program, formerly Graylian Report. I think he does a really, Micah Hanks does a really good job with his reportage, and you might want to check out his stuff. But he does a number of different projects, a number of different podcasts, but he also is interested in cryptozoology and Bigfoot. And he's also been writing for thedebrief.org, which has kind of evolved out of the new wealth of reporting on UAP as it relates to the military and what technology. But he posted this article, a human-like living fossil could still be alive in Indonesia, this anthropologist says, from, again, thedebrief.org. He published this back on February 15th. And what's the connection here? Well, with the, let me see if I can, here we go. I mentioned Tim Newcomb over at Popular Mechanics did a little blurb highlighting Micah's interview. Tiny ape-like humanoid may still be living in plain sight, scientist says. Don't be shy, little guy. This was published the next day in response to Micah's article, and runs a link to it. So there's not much there, but you can read the whole bit at thedebrief.org with Micah's wonderful interview with retired anthropologist Gregory Forth. So what this all comes down to is, as they kept the discovery in 2003 under wraps about the discovery of this hobbit-like, this small hominid in Indonesia, Gregory Forth had already been hearing reports from the natives about encounters with living small hominids, and he was so intrigued by this, he started collecting the reports, and eventually he's published a book about it. Here we go. Gregory Forth, Between Ape and Human, an anthropologist on the trail of a hidden hominoid. And they go into, in this interview, several of the instances where multiple witnesses saw these creatures, some of which were actually deceased, the creatures, and so the witnesses were able to observe the body of the creature for an extended period of time. Very interesting stuff if you're into that sort of thing. And here's this artist's reconstruction of Homo floresiensis, based on fossils recovered on the Flores Island. Very, very interesting. The way, as it says here, the locals say they're scared of us and we're scared of them. So I'm very curious to hear if anything more comes of this research. Lastly, I did have this link to, I took it down. Well, real quick here. Kevin Randall's blog, kevinrandall.blogspot.com. has a February 23rd article, Coast to Coast AM. I'm not sure what the relevance of the Coast to Coast is, talking about the Lubbock lights. And I think he's talking about correlating some apparent UFO activity with MADAR, that he's really, Kevin Randall is very interested in MADAR use in examining UFOs. But the bit about the Lubbock lights, I think, is fascinating. He relates a military sighting of a flying wing type object around the same time as the Lubbock lights. Now, this is the space between these locations is pretty significant, but it lends some credibility to each of these independent cases. And I just always like that kind of work. I think he's done some pretty good work in this regard. But I'll just leave it at that. And I had said I may say a few words before ending here, about Robbie Graham's passing. And I mean no disrespect to those who were so much more affected by his passing than me. I barely knew him. He was somebody I always thought, well, I've got plenty of time. I'll get to know him soon enough. And I from the moment he emerged on the UFO scene, I was enamored with his energy and his perspective, and obviously was very excited when I was invited to participate in UFOs Framing the Debate. And I just really thought, here's somebody young and vibrant who's going to help make a difference in this field, make changes that are long overdue. And sadly, of course, he apparently took his own life. And there's a lot more to this story, but it's not my place to tell. And really, I think the people closest to him would rather it not see the light of day, and that's probably all for the best. There are things that people do sometimes due to addiction or depression that really are horrible and hurtful to others, including people that they ostensibly love and care for greatly. All that said, I do want to remind folks that you can get help if you are having suicidal thoughts or depression or just any kind of a crisis. This new 988 Crisis and Suicide Lifeline is a very easy way to access these kinds of services. This is an evolution of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline that was formerly 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255, or online suicidepreventionlifeline.org. But 988 is so much easier to remember. But what's most important to remember is whatever feelings you are experiencing, whatever depression or crisis you're going through, it'll get better. And there are people waiting to help you. And I hope you would seek that help. On that note, I did want to end with something. One of the members of a band called Sunspot, who are into UFOs and the paranormal, posted, because of Robbie's passing, a song that they wrote inspired by him. And what they said was, quote, "Here's the at-home arrangement of a song we wrote based on a story we were told by Robbie Graham. He casually mentioned that he was afraid for a while that his phones were bugged and that he might have been watched by the CIA. Of course, we were intrigued. He said it happened while he was investigating the mysterious death of Hollywood screenwriter Gary DeVore. There's more information about this story at the link that I'll provide, but I just wanted to give that little bit of preamble. I had asked the band if we could play this, and they said, of course. So with this, we'll bid you good night.
1, 2, 3, 4. You wear the truth like a tattoo. You look over your shoulder, is there someone right behind you? Walking too close to the left-hand path, living with the target on your back. Whispers in the night are beckoning to a black magic reckoning. Hidden hands are pulling strings and watching everything. Steer clear of the dangerous kind. The death warrant has been signed. Don't fall in love with the man who knew too much. Just like in Cage 22. Just 'cause you're paranoid don't mean they're not out for you. Just what will you give up for the truth? Even if it ends up killing you. Whispers in the night are beckoning to a black magic reckoning. Hidden hands are pulling strings and watching everything. Steer clear of the dangerous kind. The death warrant has been signed. Don't fall in love with the man who